Welcome to the Fit as Mama Bear podcast. I'm Shelby, a certified strength coach, nutrition coach, mama to two, and all-around health nut. This show is about a little bit of everything healthy, fit, and natural related. So if you're striving to smash goals, eat better, feel better, and enjoy the occasional mom rant, this is the place for you. You're listening into a bonus episode today where we are chatting all about your glutes and the one thing that you're missing from your training. Joining me today is Madison, a prenatal and postnatal fitness specialist, as well as a birth doula and a mom of 3. Welcome everyone to my first ever bonus episode. So one thing you may not know about me is that I am a planner, like insanely. My blog posts and podcasts are outlined, mapped out, and already scheduled for about 4 months in advance. I get crazy anxiety with a tight deadline, so planning is kind of my jam. However, this particular podcast was just too good to pass up because it's all about being a tight ass. Okay, not really, and sorry for the language, but it's really appropriate today, and you'll see why in a few moments. So today we are chatting about your glutes, and I freaking love glutes. I've been known to say that glutes solve life problems with my clients, and I totally think that that slogan is valid. Glutes do solve life problems. However, it is impossible to strengthen your glutes if they are chronically tight. In order for a muscle to develop and strengthen, it must work through a full range of motion, and the glutes are no different. If your glutes are classically tight, you're leaving a lot of strength on the table, and since strong glutes help with back pain, knee pain, sports performance, carrying kids, your pelvic floor, postpartum recovery, I feel like I could go on and on. We want strong glutes. Now, before I rant your ear off, let me introduce my guest today because I am so damn excited. So I met Madison on Instagram of all places and fell in love with her teaching style and her knowledge. Madison is a prenatal and postnatal specialist. She's also a birth doula and a mom of 3, which is brand new. As well as running an active blog, she works with women throughout pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond to help them live active lives without pain or symptoms. Lots of moms think are kind of part of normal life. She works with clients remotely through her programs, fitness membership, and one-on-one online coaching. Madison just welcomed her newest addition, Zoe, a few weeks ago and is adjusting to life with a spunky 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and a newborn, which I can't even grasp. But more than anything I just mentioned, Madison also loves glutes, which means we are instant friends. So Madison, why don't you take a minute to tell us a bit more about yourself, your experience, and kind of how you came to be where you are today?
So actually, before I was a trainer, I was a lab manager at a yeast genetics lab. I was working towards getting a master's in epidemiology, but I did not go that route. I actually fell in love with spin classes. I started taking them at my local Jewish community center. I lost about 80 pounds, and then I became a spin instructor. So I teach Les Mills RPM. I also teach Les Mills CX Works. So I kind of fell in love with group fitness first. And then I delved into the whole personal training thing, got my personal training certification, left the lab, kind of put all of my lab fantasies and job, things to the side to start helping people. And then I got pregnant with my son. And I just noticed how little information there was out there about training and pregnancy. I was the person who wanted to lift heavy, who wanted to continue doing spin classes. And my doctor was kind of like, well, you know more than I do about it. And I was like, well, do I? And at the time I didn't. And so I, being the person that I am always a forever learner. So I just kind of went into the place where I got a million certifications on pregnancy and postpartum fitness, and all things about that. And then after he was born, I started getting really nerdy about pelvic health. And about that time was the time that I started to train to become a birth doula, because I noticed how much these two businesses have to do with each other. With working with women, I listen to so many birth stories, and where people's issues stem is often from their births and from their pregnancies. And so I noticed there was a niche that needed to be filled. And so I became a birth doula after that. And that's kind of how I came to be where I am today.
I love that, especially because I was kind of in the same boat when I was pregnant. So I've been a certified strength and conditioning specialist for 7 or 8 years now. And in that entire time and throughout that entire process of learning, the pelvic floor is not brought up. Not in any certification, it wasn't talked about at all. And it wasn't until one of my girlfriends, Terrell, it kind of introduced me to pelvic health, I think when I had just had my first, that it was like a mind blown moment that how could how is this so undervalued in terms of training? I lifted heavy through my entire first pregnancy, and I lifted heavy fairly quickly coming back, but not once did someone really explain pelvic floor health to me. And I feel like things could have been done a lot better, which they were with my second. And it made me wonder how many other moms are in the same position. You hear kind of the generation above us, whenever they sneeze and they leak a little, and everyone will tell you that's just normal because you've had kids. And that boggles my mind now, because it's normal and it's quite popular, but it's not unmanageable or unfixable. And so it just kind of blew my mind that none of this is discussed. So it's kind of the same thing that you just fly by the seat of your pants until you learn about it, and it just needs to be out there a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even my women's fitness certification, there was like the smallest chapter on pregnancy and in postpartum, and then this huge chapter on menopause. I'm like, but wait a second, we're missing so much information there that moms need to know about. It's just so underserved, really.
I took a pre and postnatal certification, I don't know how long, but the majority focuses on prenatal and what you are safely allowed to do during pregnancy, a lot with like stability ball and rows, et cetera, but that entire course, not one part mentioned the pelvic floor at all. And it or the glutes for that matter, which now blows my mind, but it's just disappointing, to be perfectly honest. So I'm glad that there's people like you who love sciencey talk and can explain it to us. All
Absolutely.
Right. So why don't we delve right into it today and chat about everything glutes? So Madison, what are the benefits of strong glutes in pregnancy and postpartum?
Oh, there's so many benefits of strong glutes in pregnancy and postpartum. You know, I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the mom butt is a big thing. And it happens to start in pregnancy, where your center of gravity kind of shifts, your posture shifts, and we tend to get glutes that are overactive and a pelvic floor that is also overactive, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But strong glutes can really head off all of those issues, particularly leaking, hip pain, back pain, pelvic pain. Strong glutes can really benefit you in that pregnancy period and into the postpartum period, when you're sitting all the time, feeding a baby, when you're generally just trying to recover from birth and from all those changes that happen in pregnancy, where the glutes kind of go through a lot of changes, the hips go through a lot of changes, and maintaining that strength in the glutes can really, really help mitigate some of these issues that happen a lot in mom life.
I know with myself personally, I got obsessed with glute training right before I had my first. So I trained glutes all through my pregnancy, and I had way less back pain than I had expected. I also, postpartum recovery was just a lot easier. I was up and walking. I think I went for a walk that day or the day after, just because I felt so good. So I know just from a recovery perspective, I felt far better than I had expected to feel after just having a baby, which was a huge deal at the time.
Yeah, for sure. And that was similar with my first. I actually didn't train at all. I didn't exercise at all. And then with my second, I did. And my recoveries were so very different from the first to the second. My second was just so much easier.
Oh, that's exciting. So what are some of the downfalls then of constant glute tension? So specifically relating to pelvic floor health and kind of before pregnancy and postpartum.
So constant glute tension happens in pregnancy because so much of your center of gravity shifts. And what tends to happen is you get a tailbone tuck and the butt tucks under. And the glutes really they're best friends with the pelvic floor. So they have some of the same attachment points. They're attached to the pelvis, obviously, and so is your pelvic floor. So they play very well together. And having that constant glute tension in that butt tuck can actually put your pelvic floor in an over-tightened or shortened position, which can also lead to incontinence, things like pelvic pain, pain during sex, all kinds of things that you really don't want to be experiencing. So maintaining that constant glute tension can really put the pelvic floor under more tension, which then in turn makes it a little bit weaker. We think that constant tension means like it's doing better, but it's really doing the opposite of that. So we want to be able to both relax the glutes and the pelvic floor and strengthen them so you get that full range of motion. It's like if you were to hold your bicep in a shortened position all the time, and then you go to pick up something off the floor, you're not really going to have that full range of motion of strength as you would if you actually were to let your arm go and relax every once in a while. So same thing with the glutes and the pelvic floor. So they're besties.
So I think that's an important thing to note, because we tend to think when someone mentions postpartum leaking or leaking prenatal that our pelvic floor muscles are very, very weak and everything is loose. And that's not actually the case. A lot of the times it can be that they are overactive or they're just stuck in a short position. So it's not so much about fully releasing them as just being able to get them through a solid range of motion while you release them and while you strengthen them. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main symptoms of overly active and tight glutes? So basically, how are they going to know if they are weak or tight?
Oh man, that is a good question, because a lot of people ask me this one, because it can go both ways. You can experience symptoms related to weaker glutes and with tighter glutes, and they kind of go hand in hand, because if you're holding those glutes in a really tightened position all the time, they're not necessarily going to have that full strength that they need. So one of the biggest signs is that you're noticing that you're clenching your glutes all the time, or during things that you really don't have to clench your glutes for, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, holding your baby, holding your toddler. If you have back pain when you're going to pick something up, that may be a sign that your glutes are overactive. If you have kind of a flat butt, that can be a sign of overactive glutes, which is not necessarily on trend for everybody. Some people have flat butts. I am a person who has a no acid-all syndrome. So I have to work really hard to actually have some kind of butt. But I also tend to clench my glutes. So they can kind of go hand in hand. So those are just a few things to note when you're thinking of, do I have tight glutes? Am I holding my glutes under tension all the time? Noticing those things about your posture and how your pelvis is tilted can be really helpful.
So tell me about the mom butt then.
The mom butt. That's so common and such a joke. But from so many people, I have a client who texted me and was like, so this mom butt thing that I have. I'm like, yeah. So the mom butt happens because, as I've said before, so many changes happen to the posture and to your pelvis during pregnancy. What tends to happen is the tailbone tucks under, the glutes tend to clench a lot. And so the mom butt comes from that. It's actually the fact that your glutes aren't working in that full range of motion, so you're not able to get that full strength. And that full strength can contribute to that nice roundness that you get. And so the mom butt comes from changes in posture, sitting a lot when you're feeding your baby, which is unavoidable. That happens. You don't have to stand to feed your baby. That's really challenging. So just all of those changes that happen in pregnancy and into that postpartum period can contribute to that flatness that we see often in the mom butt.
And I'd like to note too, especially during pregnancy, obviously your center of gravity shifts, we do know that. Your body's going to do whatever it can in order to compensate that to keep you upright. So it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's not that your weight distribution is off. It's just that your body needs to keep you upright. And if things are not normally where they used to be, your body's going to pull wherever it can to do its job. Okay, so it is completely normal that your posture shifts and that you do kind of get that pressure low back because your glutes are tucked under, because you are growing a big belly and it kind of takes some effort to hold you up and hold the baby up. Okay, so just one quick thing to note, because I know we all freak out about posture during pregnancy, and it's so silly because you can strengthen and you can do your best, but your body's going to do whatever the hell it needs to do in order to keep you going to deliver a baby. So things like spot training or having belly only pregnancies make my eye twitch horrifically, because your body just doesn't work that way in pregnancy at all. It is doing whatever it can. It is in survival mode and growth mode, and anything outside of that is just what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was pregnant with my first, I was actually taking an advanced anatomy class where I dissected a cadaver. And my anatomy teacher, the first day, I know, I was kind of crazy. My anatomy teacher, the first day, was going over the spine, and she got to the lumbar spine and she said, did you know, and looked at me, actually during pregnancy, your lumbar vertebrae get larger to support that weight. So many things happen that are not in your control. And that's why I really don't like doing correct and incorrect posture pictures or anything like that, because there is really no such thing. Your posture and what is right and wrong is kind of in the eye of the person who's looking at you, and depending on the phase that you're in. And your body is going to do what it needs to do to get through this huge time of change.
And the truth is, the only goals you should have when working out during pregnancy are to feel good. So again, movement should feel good. If it doesn't feel good, you probably shouldn't be doing it during pregnancy. You can work to prepare for postpartum, and you can alleviate pregnancy-induced symptoms the best you can. But outside of that, you're not going to be able to manipulate your body a whole lot during pregnancy because it kind of has other things going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just a reminder for all the moms, because I know that there's a lot of things circling out on there about how to stay lean and stay thin and focus on just gaining in your belly, which I'd like to point out is actually impossible. You cannot choose where you store weight during pregnancy or at any time. It does not work that way. Okay, so just ignore that focus, please, while pregnant. So outside of the mini rant there, because that one gets me a little bit fired up.
Yeah, me too, same.
It honestly hurts my mind every time I see it floating around. It does come up every so often. But if our glutes are tight, what do we do?
So the first thing that you do if your glutes are tight is notice during the day what's happening with your pelvis. Is it tucked under a lot? Are you squeezing your glutes all the time? We hold tension in our glutes like we hold tension in our shoulders. So same story. If you're really stressed out, notice what's going on in your butt, because it can be that you're like holding your glutes really tense and tight all during the day and you're not really noticing it.
That's the best I've ever heard, just so you know.
So that's the first thing you can do is release the tension during the day in your glutes. Another thing you can do is try to shift the pelvis back. So if you're noticing that you've got that tuck under, so you've got that slight rounding in the butt that goes under, you can just untuck it a little bit. Get your ass behind you is what I often tell my clients. Like, you want to leave it in the past. You don't want it to be in your future, like all forward there. So that's another thing that you can do. And then, of course, glute training. So we want to make sure that we're backing up these shifts in posture and these shifts in where our tension is being held with the actual training. Glute training is super, super important. It's something that is in every single one of my clients' programs, every single one of my 6-week programs or 8-week programs, everything. I love the glutes, and they're super, super important. Not just the big pretty one, the maximus. There are 3 glute muscles, so we want to be working every single one of them and all the kinds of range of motion that we can. So those are the things that you can do if you've got tight glutes.
I love glutes. Truly, I don't think I can shout that enough. And I truly believe that strong glutes make for better moms. Just think, having the ability to chase, carry, and laugh with your kids without pain and pee-free sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Which is exactly why I put together a mini course on building stronger glutes. Every single thing you need to reap the benefits we've chatted about today. And you won't just receive information. You'll also be given specific glute workouts to help you get stronger. You'll have the option to use just the mini glute circuits, the workout finishers, or the 5-week full body workouts with an emphasis on glute exercises. All with video demos, of course. If you want stronger glutes, if you want less back pain, more laughter, and to not cringe when holding your babes, head over to www.fitasmamabare.com/glute training course and jump on the pre-sale list. You just stole my heart, just so you know. Because I am clearly a glute fanatic. Now, one thing I'm going to touch on to help you get a better range of motion while you are pregnant, kind of untuck. I did see an osteopath, which I found extremely helpful for me. I tend to have a bit more sway back and a very big hyperextension in my lumbar when I'm pregnant, but not everyone is that way. But osteopaths or prenatal massage can kind of help alleviate some of those symptoms and just help get a bit more movement through your lumbar and through your hips if that's available to you. So I'm not sure if you did any massage or osteo while you were pregnant, but it feels fantastic.
Yeah, I actually didn't, but I do recommend chiropractic and osteopath and massage. Pelvic floor physical therapy can help too, particularly if you're dealing with lots of incontinence or pelvic pain, those kinds of things.
And common misconception, you can see a pelvic floor physio while you are pregnant. I know a lot of people think that they are just for postpartum when you are recovering and kind of check out what happened during pregnancy. But I saw mine during my pregnancy also, just so I could get a heads up on kind of how my body was changing, what I might need to work on to counterbalance some of the things happening. So it is possible to see one during your pregnancy also.
Absolutely. And they can definitely help. I've had several clients who've had pretty bad degrees of tears with first pregnancies and have seen pelvic floor physical therapists, and had great results with working with them on how birth positions and different things like that. So very, very helpful.
Yeah, I didn't know about pelvic floor physios until after my first, but it made a very big difference going into my second, knowing kind of where I was tight and why I was tight, because I tend to only have one side of my pelvis wants to be tight, the other one is fine.
Same. Yeah.
Which is so silly, and you kind of wonder what the hell you are doing that happens.
Right.
But for me, it would make zero sense then to strengthen as a whole, because I'm just going to keep one side chronically tight. So, and unfortunately, that's something that you can't always diagnose yourself. So having that option is sometimes really, really helpful.
Yes.
Now, any last tips or big thoughts on unclenching glutes and glutes in general?
Oh man, glutes are so important. You should be training them in pregnancy and postpartum, and really anytime. All the glute work, all the single leg work, it's so important and will really help mitigate any aches and pains that you have and work through any symptoms that you may be experiencing. So I'm just a huge fan of glutes and glute training in general. And so do it. Just do it.
I love it. I'm going to add one thing to that, because I know I think sometimes when we think of a strong muscle, we think that we have to lift very heavy weights to get that muscle. And that is not true with the glutes. The glutes actually respond best to a variety of loads, reps, games, and training protocols, but you can easily strengthen them at home with little to no weight. Now, I'm a fan of resistance bands, obviously, because I find they just give you a little bit extra bang for your buck. They're super cost effective and you can store them easily, but you don't need heavy weights to have strong glutes. So I hope that no one's thinking that, because I promise when you are pregnant, you cannot put a barbell on your lap and hip thrust 150 pounds. It does not work. Okay?
Nope. Nope, so, not at all.
I think I tried until with my first, I was really small. So I got to about 6 months before there was really any belly. But my second, after 3 months, I was like, well, there goes that.
You can't do that anymore. Yes. No. And that's where mini bands come in help. Super handy. I love mini bands too. Huge fan of those.
Yeah. They're just a nice way to target areas of your glutes that you probably didn't think of. So as you mentioned, there are 3 of them. And it is, while I love bridges and hip thrusts, it is not all about your glute max. You do have to target them through external rotation and abduction and all of that fun jazz. And the best way to do that is with a mini band. So if you can grab one, especially if you are pregnant. Oh, my tip on that is to please sit down to wrap it around your ankles or your knees. Don't be the pregnant lady that's trying to stand and get a band around her ankles. It's not a plausible situation. No. That would be my number one tip for training glutes while pregnant. I know it worked really well for me. It's worked well for a lot of my clients. Now, I think I could chat about the glute muscles for an alarming amount of time, because I have a slight obsession with them. But let's remember that you can't take action to strengthen your glutes until you have a good range of motion. So please keep that in mind. If you want to get strong, reduce pain, carry kids with ease, focus on relaxing your glutes before you strengthen them. And for all of you looking to connect with Madison, you can actually find her at her website, which I'm going to get you to say because I am not going to butcher your last name. So go right ahead, drop your website, and tell us where they can find you on social media too.
So my website is madisonkleckler.com, Cleckler. Lots of people forget that second K, or the second C, whatever it is. And then madison.kleckler on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on Pinterest as well.
Beautiful. I'm going to link to all of those in the show notes because it's way easier. But if you have a second, go click like on her Instagram profile, because she produces a ton of content, and I love, and baby pictures. They're really, really super cute right now. But I love seeing all of the different little tips and tricks that you probably don't think of when it comes to postpartum training. So remember that if you are in need of fitness tips, workouts, and amazingly healthy recipes, to check out my website at www.fitasmamabear.com. And on that note, check back soon to catch the next episode of the Fit as a Mama Bear podcast. If you took one thing from today's episode, I hope it's that being a tight ass isn't nearly as much fun as full range of motion. Chat soon.